Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where healing and mamahood intersect. I'm Emily, your host. Join us as we discover practical strategies to nurture ourselves with kindness and understanding. Stay tuned for insights and inspiration to support you on your path of healing and growth. Let's dive in together. This is Mamahood After Trauma. Hello, Mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am so excited that you've taken some time out of your busy schedule to tune in and listen to this conversation. Today, I am joined by Bridget. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Emily.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation. So what we're talking about today is about the stories that we tell ourselves that can hold us back from stepping into the person we were created to be.
Right.
So let's dive right in. I don't waste any time. Let's dive in the deep end.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So what brought you to working in this space?
Well, when I was a younger mom, I should say, in my early 30s, I had gotten to that point. I had two young kids. I was living in Orange County, California. Had a job that I loved. I had a family that I loved. And I had been so focused on getting to that point that I really didn't realize that I wasn't paying attention to what was important to me. And so I got to this moment in life, everything I had ever wanted had manifested, everything I
Mhm.
wanted. And yet there was still this hole inside of me.
Mm,
And I it was really painful and really challenging because of course I loved my family and I just felt so much guilt and shame and isolation because here I was with this beautiful life, everything I had wanted and actually dreamed of and had created this vision for myself. And yet at the same time, there was something missing for me. And that journey led me on a really long, painful, introspective journey road to where I really had to dig down deep and understand, why am I here on this planet? What is my purpose? What am I passionate about? And I was really driven by the fact that I didn't want to wake up one day, look at my husband 20 years from now and say, who are you and where have I been for the past 20 years? And
mm,
it became this sense of urgency that I really need to figure this out. And I had always wanted to share that story. I went on to discover what that was over many years and created a nonprofit and did that for about 10 years and found that my passion and my joy through that. And had always wanted to tell my story about being that mom who felt lost and the guilt and the shame that went along with it, and wanted to let other moms know and other women know that if they were feeling this way, that it's okay and there's nothing to be ashamed of. And it makes sense, right? Because we're kind of put on this path. And when I turned 50, my husband turned 60, my nonprofit turned 10, and our youngest went off to college. I thought this feels like a really good time to kind of put a bow in that and focus on my next chapter. And that's when I started getting into coaching and working primarily with moms who were facing an empty nest and had no sense of who they were. And through working with those moms over a period of several years, realized that, that's just one of the many transitions that happens in this midlife section. I know a lot of your moms are younger, but in this midlife section where, you're dealing with your kids leaving, if you have children, you might be considering retirement. You might be taking care of your parents or your husband's parents. You might be going through a divorce. There's so many transitions that are happening during this time, and the kids leaving the nest are just one of them. And the stuff that gets in the way of moving forward is the same, no matter what obstacle we're facing. And one of those things is these stories that we tell ourselves and that we've learned over the years.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking about, how we as moms kind of lose our identity in the mix of taking care of all of the people and doing all of the day-to-day things, is something that all moms face, because you go from, living your life as a independent woman to, okay, now I've got a couple of kids who need me to survive.
Right,
And it it can cloud out, for lack of a better term, our individuality. And if you're a trauma survivor, it adds another layer, because you don't really know who you are without the trauma. So
right.
it's multi-layered. So can you share a little bit about what stories are common that moms tell themselves?
Well, there's so many, as we're growing up, we are shaped by, it could be a comment that, I mean, I remember my grandma said something to me when I was 10. That was like my youngest memory of, she was really proud of me for leaving the cookies on the plate overnight. I didn't eat them. And, that meant that I internalized that to mean that there was something wrong, that I had an eating problem, that, okay, it's good
Mm,
not to eat these things. It can be stuff we're not even aware of. It can be well-meaning teachers who tell us, you're really good at writing, or maybe you shouldn't, study history, or, you shouldn't, maybe poetry's not your thing, or ceramics is your thing, or your parents who shape your identity by treating you a certain way, whether you're the good kid or the bad kid or the straight A student or the troublemaker, or, these names and these identities that we take on. And all of those things start to shape how we perceive ourselves. And as we move through life, if we don't stop to pay attention to what those are and get cognizant of them, we internalize them. And before you know it, you're interacting with your outside world as this thing that you've kind of
mhm,
adopted. And what I've noticed over time, sorry, my chair is slipping down. As I've noticed over time in working with moms is that, and women, is that, when they get to this point in their life where all of a sudden they're not mom anymore because their kids have left, that's a role that is so prominent, right, in
yeah,
our life, or if they're going through a divorce, so they're not a wife anymore, or if they retire from their job, or whatever the case may be, when you take away that thing that you've identified with for so long, you're left with, well, then who am I? And what am
mm,
I really about? And that's when the stories can start to come to the surface. And as you get, what my favorite thing is working with women in this phase is that they start to get curious. When they start to get curious about who they are, a whole
mhm,
new story emerges. And the beautiful thing about our stories is that so much of it is made up, our interpretations of what we've heard and what we've seen and who we think ourselves to be. The good news is that we can rewrite those.
yes,
We can accept them in a different way and create a whole new story for ourselves. So, you know, I mentioned a couple of the things, the identities that we take on, but it's the stories of what we can and can't do, who we should and shouldn't be, what's okay, what's not okay, what is a good mom,
yeah,
taking time out for yourself is selfish. All these things that we kind of accept as fact,
mhm,
when in fact it's not true in a lot of cases, right? Um, the selfish one is perpetuated throughout our society,
mhm,
that moms are the ones to take care of and do for everybody else. And that taking time out for yourself is selfish because you're taking time away from your family. When you really stop to think about it, how am I going to continue to give when I am operating in a vacuum. If I am being completely drained and depleted, I am not the best mom. I am not the best wife. I am not the best sister, friend, anybody in my life. So
Mhm.
pausing to fill it back up and find those things that, like they say, fill your cup is
Mhm.
really important so that you can be there the way you need to be.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. We interrupt this amazing conversation for a word from our sponsor. Are you tired of feeling like you're on an emotional roller coaster in mamahood? Ready to break free from the fear and frustration that's holding you back? Introducing Mama Untriggered private podcast series, a transformative 5-episode journey to help you calm your nervous system and reclaim your strength in mamahood. In each episode, we'll guide you through practical, actionable steps to understand your triggers, build your trigger toolbox, and harness the power of community for support. Say goodbye to those moments of overwhelm and hello to more peaceful, empowered you. You didn't become a mama to spend your day on edge. It's time to take control of your emotional well-being and create a positive, joyful experience for you and your littles. Ready to break free from the emotional roller coaster? Subscribe now to the Mama Untriggered private podcast series and start your journey to a calmer, happier mamahood today. What are some, I don't know, two or three tips that you have for moms to gain that awareness of those identities that they've taken on that may not be serving them?
Yeah, that's a good one. And this is really hard. I think the most important thing is the awareness, starting to pay
Mm,
attention to how you're talking about yourself,
mhm,
what you think when you look in the mirror, that inner voice that's telling you, oh, you can't do that. That's silly. Who are you to think
mhm.
you can, right?
Yeah.
And the best way I think to understand and become aware of those, it takes a lot of practice, and it is a process.
Mhm,
It's a consistent, the way that I did it when I was a young mom, trying to reconnect with myself was the only way I knew how, which was I just need to sit down and ask myself and think about, what am I passionate about, what's important to me, what am I drawn to when I'm listening to the news or watching TV, like what stories tug at my heartstrings, when do I get emotional, and start to take note of all of these things without any sort of filter. So if it's, in my case, it was, paying attention to these stories of young kids who are making a difference in their community. And I
mhm,
thought, wow, that lights me up. That's so inspiring to me to hear about these kids who are, taking upon themselves to, they see something wrong and they want to make a difference. And that was what eventually led me to start the nonprofit. It was called Ripple Kids. And the mission is to inspire and empower kids to take action in their community. And we worked with tween age kids between 8 and 12 or 13, as a way to empower them so they understood that they could make a difference. And but at first I sat there with blank pages. I would get up every morning before the kids were up,
mhm.
and I had a few minutes quiet to myself. And I would just sit there and write, what am I passionate about? And sometimes the pages were blank for, a week and a half, because when you're so conditioned to focus on everybody else, pausing to think about yourself can feel really uncomfortable. It's
Yeah,
like exercising a new muscle.
it's so hard.
It's really hard. Yeah. But I'll tell you that that's where the gold is,
Mhm,
because our intuition, all the answers we seek are within us. And I know that sounds kind of trite and cliche, but it's absolutely true. We just don't give ourselves the time or the space to listen to what's happening inside of us. And a lot of times it's because we're too busy, right? Whether it's, running from soccer practice back home to cook dinner and helping with homework. And, when the kids are little, there's very little bandwidth or space or time for you to even think about yourself. But I will tell you that it is critical
Yeah.
because you don't want to get to the point when your kids leave
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden you're going, wow, this is terrifying. Like I have no idea who I am. The the transition that happens when your kids leave, when you're so focused only on them, is much more disruptive than if you
Mm.
have been focusing on, and starting to pull threads about what interests you so that you have a place to start. Yes, it's still difficult when they leave, but at the same time, if you have something to look forward to or an idea or a thread to pull, or you've already been in practice, it makes that transition much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Like if you're going about your merry little way, focused 100% on your kids, and then they decide to go to college or travel a world or whatever it is they're going to do, and they're not there to focus on anymore,
Yeah.
then you find yourself sitting on the edge of your bed looking at your husband like, who the heck are you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's really challenging. There's a couple things. One is that, a lot of times when I talk about prioritizing yourself, especially when you have young kids, I'm not saying, you lock the door when, Susie and Johnny are outside, eating or playing out in the street, right? I'm not saying you lock the door and then put on your headphones and do your thing. I'm talking about
Definitely
treating
don't do that.
yourself. Yeah, don't do that. Treating yourself with the same time, love, and compassion that you do everybody else on your list. Because I guarantee you that if any of this is resonating with your listeners, if they do this one exercise, if they stop to make a list of their priorities in their life,
Yeah.
whether it's their family, their spouse or partner, their kids, the kids' school, soccer team, PTA, the job,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be towards the bottom. And all I'm
Yeah.
saying is not to put you number one, but to put you in the same category as, taking the kids to school. So you say, okay, I can give myself 30 minutes a day to start. I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. And using that time to just start digging in. And then, like I said, as things start to pop up for you, recording them without any
Mm-hmm.
kind of filter is really important. So it could be on a walk in the morning. It could be, as you're driving the car to go pick them up from school. And all of a sudden, once you kind of get in the practice of thinking and you're driving, you're going, wow, that sounds really cool. Put it on your voice memo so that eventually over time a picture will start to form and you'll start to get an
Mm-hmm.
idea of what resonates with you.
Oh, wow. I love that. And something that came to mind as you were speaking was something that I've spoken to many different people about. How you speak about yourself is huge. Like those thoughts that pop into your head, that inner narrative. If you are saying things to yourself that you would never ever say to somebody else like external to you,
Mm-hmm.
you you are abusing yourself.
Mm-hmm. 110%.
Yeah, so just becoming aware of that voice
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And then starting to transform it so that
Yeah.
instead of looking in the mirror and going, oh my God, my wrinkles look so bad, it's like recognizing that thought pattern and stopping yourself and going, I love this lipstick on me today, or my eyes look really pretty today. And it's not easy, it's uncomfortable. But anybody who's been on any sort of a growth journey or wants to be on one has to understand or understands that it's not easy. But I will tell you that the payoff is beyond description.
Oh yeah.
My life was completely picked upside down and dumped out when I was going through my transition. I moved out of the house. I filed for divorce because I was so committed to finding that thing that really spoke to me, my purpose and my passion. Thankfully, we put it back together, and we just celebrated 30 years. So that's the good news. But I will tell you that I had to walk through that, and not that I would advocate that for anybody, but that was my journey. And I I would do it all over again if I had to. As painful, overwhelming, terrifying
Mm-hmm.
as it was, I now have this life today that I have created because
Mm-hmm.
of all of that hard work. And it doesn't really ever end. I am a self-proclaimed self-growth junkie. I love, digging deep, getting curious about myself. When I say something that feels out of alignment, I'm like, "Ooh, what was that about?" Dig in, understand. Like it's, 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 it's a very, having that awareness is a very it's a good way to be really present to your everyday life. And it's so easy to be in the future or in the past without being
Yeah.
present.
Yeah.
But the beauty is here and now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. How can our listeners connect with you further if they'd like to?
Probably the easiest way is through my website. It's bridgetbolden.com. And I'm on Instagram. You can get the Instagram through there. I have a Facebook group right now. There's some resources on there. I do work, a lot of the language speaks to women in midlife,
Mm-hmm.
but I really feel like it's really any age or stage, because like I was in my early to mid 30s when I went through the same things and the same questions that women who are my age now, 50, 55, 57, 60, are asking themselves. So there's no right or wrong time. It's never too early or too late. And I think the sooner that you start to get curious about it, start listening, start paying attention, and setting aside just, 30 minutes a day to just ask yourself those questions is a great place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bridget. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, thank you, Emily. It was lovely. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. If you would like more of the Mamahood After Trauma community, make sure to look in the description of this episode for the link to become a Mamahood After Trauma Inner Circle member. Until next time, Mama, keep